Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. Gonna let everyone trickle in here as we get started. My name is Katie, and I'm the Director of Community here at Rock Paper Coin. And as you come in and get settled, I want to take a moment and get a few housekeeping items underway. So number one, we would love to know who you are. So please take out those phones, give us a follow at Rock Paper Coin on Instagram. For those of you who are new to Rock Paper Coin, we are a very cool female-founded and owned tech startup. Our platform serves small business owners just like yourselves by providing invoices, proposals, contracts, and so much more on a modern and clean platform that your clients love using, all at an affordable price that you will also love. All right, so number two, while you still have those phones out, please give our guest Cheval a follow. My amazing colleague Sari is here in the comments during this webinar, so if you need anything, just feel free to ask questions there, and she'll go ahead and add all the handles that you need and the links in the chat. Speaking of the chat, one last housekeeping item before we get started. Community is big to me, as I know it is to Cheval, so please say hello in the chat and let us know who you are, where you are, what you do. Also, feel free to record any part of this, post it to your own Instagram, and of course, tag us. We would love to see what resonated with you. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. So let's be honest, it would be hard to miss the story of our guest today. Chances are most of you know of the incredibly talented and industry beloved wedding dress designer who filled our TV screens, but mostly our hearts, with joy and positivity with her designs and most notably her authentic, bubbly personality. Unfortunately, those dreams came crashing down as a very one-sided employment contract had her suddenly questioning everything: her right to her identity, her future, and most crushingly, her right to simply do the thing that she loved. As Cheval posted on socials a few weeks ago, I'll cliff note her current status for you here. She is still in the lawsuit, and many of the same restrictions, unfortunately, are still in place. She is waiting an order from the Second Circuit for her appeal on the 5-year unpaid non-compete provision that goes until 2027 and the ownership of her previous social media account. Her counterclaims against her former employer have been stated as they're now in bankruptcy. And while that might be part of her story, more powerful is today. And today, she has risen into a role that truly defines who she is. She is Cheval, and she is here to tell us all about her dreams, her reinvention, and the lessons she wants you to learn from her story and success. Cheval, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm excited to be reunited because the last time that we were together was on a virtual conference right in the middle of COVID. So I'm excited to, number one, be through with that, but number two, to be reunited here today with Rock Paper Coin and with you in a safe space. There is so much to be thankful for and excited for, and I'm just grateful that you're here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and hello to everyone joining. And I do have my special guest with me today. You can kind of see her right there. So if you hear snoring in the background, that's why.
I can hear it, and it's the most adorable thing in the world. I'm just like, the little coos and little snorts coming from her are magic. So keep snoring, Winnie, keep snoring. Okay, well, before we dive into anything else today, I think people are always so intrigued by the idea of a reinvention, right? Like everyone dreams of building a second life by buying, let's say, an abandoned castle in France and eating cheese all day. But your reinvention was not a random rebranding session or a daydream turned true life. So tell us what Cheval means and why you picked it.
Absolutely. Well, I think everybody fantasizes about the idea of a reinvention because a fresh start is just a blank canvas, ready to paint something new. And when I first thought about getting back out there and pivoting and rebranding, I thought about it as a creative opportunity to kind of come out with a new avatar or alter ego and see it as almost the way a musician would see a new chapter or a new album. And I saw it very positively. And I think reinvention can sometimes get a bad rap in feeling like you have to abandon part of who you are. But I actually see it as almost a remix or a shape shift where you get to kind of pick and choose the parts that worked well for you and then remix them going forward. So the word cheval means horse in French. And for me, I just loved the word itself. I felt like it sounded really strong and it had like a gallop to it, like pun intended. And I've always really fantasized and been emotional and imaginative in my design work. And that's involved, unicorns and Pegasuses. So I really leaned into that. And I also thought about, what is in a name? Because of course, a part of me really did have to grieve my original name, especially in a public setting, because I had to change my name publicly. But rather than dwelling too much on that, I thought about how I can energize something new and what would just make me excited and feel good. And that was Cheval for me. So I ran with it against the wind, and so far, so good.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And it takes a lot of creativity to reinvent ourselves too, right? So I'm curious, have you always wanted to be creative? Because I know that you actually have quite an athletic background, which people may or may not know, which also explains why you're so driven. But can you walk us through a time and explain how you fell into the wild rabbit hole that is the wedding industry, and specifically getting the opportunity to even be a designer?
Yes, I love creating. And I don't really remember exactly that moment when I was young and said, I want to be a wedding dress designer, but it was very early on. And I do credit my grandmother, who was always just welcoming creative endeavors around the house, whether it was baking or sewing or crochet or painting. And so I feel like I was exposed to that really young. And I found myself always in a state of flow when I got to create. Like I wasn't really second guessing myself. I wasn't feeling like I should be doing something else. And I think I really paid attention to that as I got older. And what I find interesting is that not everybody gets to do something that they love doing. But I think if you pay attention to where things feel easy and effortless in a way, it makes it easier to progress. I do think you can learn most things, but if you're actually finding yourself enjoying it and developing and nurturing it, it can be a really beautiful thing to run with. Um, and I think with being a gymnast growing up, I'm a competitor at heart. And I've always seen competition as a really wonderful, beautiful thing that makes us all kind of want to show up and do our best. And whether you're comparing yourself to yourself from yesterday or just looking at somebody out there that's doing something similar to you, but it elevates you, it brings that aspirational quality. I think it's really good to encourage that. And so in my particular situation where I've actually been forced to kind of sit out for a reason, that I'm either threatening to a business or whatever it may be, I've actually found that really interesting. And I've chosen to kind of see it as actually a validation in my craft and talent. And I think for how much we all struggle to find things that we're confident about, it's really a blessing to feel like you've got value to add. And so it's important to hold on to that, even in the unseen hours when nobody gets to give you credit for it. I think that's a little lesson I've taken away in just being a creator at heart.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I imagine that getting to a place where you're in such a prestigious role, right? Because I mean, it really was like you got to be in a position in which you dream about, and that unicorns and fairy tales and all of those things, right? It's a pinch me moment. But to your point, I feel like there had to be times when you almost felt like, what am I doing here? right? You exude such confidence and joy, which is amazing. But as we know, many creatives deal with imposter syndrome, especially in this industry with so much comparison in social media in front of us all the time. I don't think it really ever matters how long you do something, right? No matter how many years I know I add to my resume, I still feel like I have imposter syndrome in some regard. But in all of that, would you say that you've encountered this? And how have you learned to push past it?
Absolutely have encountered it, and I think I will throughout my whole career. I don't know where that almost self-sabotage nature comes from in feeling unworthy or questioning whether you deserve what you have. And a lot of times I think it's just about getting out of your head, not coming up with conspiracy theories against yourself. And it's kind of silly when you think about not being on your own team, and I think that's kind of what imposter syndrome can be. And so when it does creep up, I tend to tell myself, get outside, go touch grass, ground yourself, don't get so caught up in how you're coming off, and continue to reinvest in that joy that you find and in what you're doing. But I also think comparison, as everyone says, it is the thief of joy, and it happens naturally a lot of times. But I think it's important to remember not to compare your start to somebody else's middle. And that's so easy to do now on social media because you look at what everyone else is doing and it seems like, oh my gosh, they're just nonstop, like enough already, like it can really eke away. I think it's your own journey. And so if you're going to compare, just make sure you also give yourself the credit you deserve for how far you've come and how much further ahead you are than probably 90% of other people, So I kind of try to look at it at both sides of the coin so that you're not putting yourself behind inadvertently, just in your thoughts.
You know what? That's so true too. Because I mean, especially with social media, but like it really is because you don't know where that other person that you are comparing yourself to is sitting, right? They could be, knee high in a full-time job still that, they're doing everything on the side and then they're comparing, I need more coffee, themselves to someone who's 10 years full time in something that they want to be doing. However, something that somebody told me was, well, you're comparing yourself to another person, someone else is comparing themselves to you. Right. And so it's such a moment to be able to sit back and say, like, wait, like, I feel like I'm so far behind, but you're telling me that someone else is looking at me being like, wow, I wish I was in that place. And they're even farther behind. So you're right. Like it is such a moment to be able to just stop and look at where you are and also just find joy, right? In like where you are in the moment and where you are. And I think that you're really, really great at that, both just professionally, but also just personally. So I love that. So shifting gears a little to something that's a little more, I mean, really, I think you've done a really great job of talking about this, but I'm sure there are moments when you look back, when you tried to see where things might have gone differently, right? I know we all kind of sit in that place sometimes. And for a lot of creatives, this happens almost every day in our businesses, from losing a lead to having an awkward conversation with a client or another vendor, all of which is enough to lead us down a path of over questioning everything, self-sabotaging, right? Doubting and even questioning our own worth. So I know something I've heard you mention before that is the bigger lesson I'd want to point out here. And that's instead of over analyzing yourself, it's really about learning how to say no to opportunities in an industry that makes you feel like you have to say yes to ensure anything, right? That next payment, that next client, the next project, the next contract. It's like you have to say yes. And in your case, you said yes and signed on the dotted line to what felt like, and in many cases was, an amazing opportunity. I'd love to hear your deeper thoughts on this and any lessons and advice that we can take away from that moment.
Take it from somebody that has spent a whole career saying yes to things.
Same.
um,
Horrible.
Learning how to say no has been one of my biggest challenges. And I really do think it comes from a good place of just wanting to do right for people and wanting to be a team player. And I'm somebody that's always avoided conflict. And actually I credit my fiance to a lot of this because he is so good at dealing with conflict. And I run for cover. I really sugarcoat a lot of things. I paint red flags pink. I've done it for a really long time. And, they say acknowledging it is the first step to change. But what I've tried to kind of rephrase in my brain is that saying no to something is actually a way of saying yes inside to something that you're kind of saving on to. And so I've looked at it in a way of opening up time for things that I'll probably be better at and not feeling like I constantly have to overextend to prove my worth or to get that job or that opportunity. And on that same token, you also want to surround yourself with people that do have a good relationship with no. And I'm sure we'll get to this a little bit more when we talk about community support, but I'm still a work in progress. I'm still working on it every day. And my default is to say yes to people because I don't want to disappoint them. But what ends up happening is I either set a bad precedent for myself or I end up hurting myself later on because then, I have to fulfill it. I have to not overpromise and underdeliver. I have to keep staying true to what I committed to, and there is so much accountability in that. I mean, ultimately for me, I did make a decision and I did say yes, I did sign a contract. And so I have to own that, and however it's been interpreted later on and however it's unfolded, like I still have to find a real accountability and where's the responsibility I've had and played in this and what can I do to move forward. So, learning that lesson has been really tough, but it is something I think our foundation kind of focuses on, and giving context to why you're not going to be disappointing somebody just by saying no, I think is really important, especially for the people pleasers in the world.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And also just like in the power of the industry that you're in, right? As a small business owner or as a creative, like you really are in that because you're a yes person. Like you want to make people happy, right? I'm in community, and before that was a business owner, and so my entire life was making people feel really good and like having a part in that. And I don't know many small business owners or creatives that get into the industry to say a whole bunch of no's and be really grouchy and grumpy and like make things complicated. But you're right. Like, gosh, there is just so much in that. And I saw in the comments, everyone was just loving your quotes, painting the red flags pink is brilliant. And so absolutely. Yes. And I feel like this naturally leads us to now talk about almost like the power of mistakes and where we go next after something unexpected or even expected happens, right? So everyone watching this can certainly say that you have traveled near and far on a trip that you did not ask to go on, right? We can all agree with that. So can you walk us through what you know now about, for lack of a better term, getting the bad end of a deal and your wisdom on how someone might be able to avoid that?
Oh, yes, very loaded question to unpack. One soundbite that I just want to start off with is that I think smart people learn from their mistakes, but really wise people learn from other people's mistakes.
Mm.
And I kind of got there a little late in life because I took the long route. I did make some mistakes and now I am really trying my best to learn from them. And I think we all are, that's what life is. You do make mistakes. I mean, we've all made mistakes, and being able to recognize that and really like, what is that lesson? And not just stopping at the information, but actually making it actionable for yourself. Like, what can you physically do that shows you've learned from this mistake is really important. And that lesson for me has been to have the difficult conversations up front.
Mhm.
And there's a term one of my really good friends came up with is called bluff, BLUF, which is bottom line up front. And
Ooh.
it's like, get there quick. Like if you're entering a partnership or if you're looking to work with somebody, set that expectation early on, because if you don't, if there's not clarity, if there's not a contract, if there is a contract, like it can really make a world of difference in having that hard forefront right at the beginning so that you can get it out of the way and then all go back to loving each other and moving on. And I think that was probably my biggest takeaway, because there are people that will sugarcoat exactly what their intentionalities are. And it's important to know what people want to make money with you versus what kind of people want to make money off of you. And there's a much different motivation in those two things. And if it hits later, it hurts more. It absolutely does, because a precedent has been set. There's expectations that are not being addressed and met, and people get emotional, and it's a recipe for disaster. So I think that's something that I am continually trying to remind myself, especially in starting a new business too, because that first year of business building, and I'm sure so many people can relate to this, it's so experimental, and like you just don't really know what to expect. And you are going to be working with people that have exerted so much effort and energy. And you unveil a whole different side to people when they've really been bootstrapping and worked to the bone. And I think business has a way of weeding out people that maybe aren't serious about building a business, or maybe it's just not where their specialty is. And that is fine. That's a beautiful thing to unveil. But you do want to try to get ahead of that as much as you can so that you can keep moving forward with that momentum that works for your business.
Well, I think that's also such a true statement in the sense of your first business versus your second business versus when you're in your 20s versus like when, you're old enough now to know better, right? In the beginning, you're just throwing spaghetti at the wall and trying to figure out exactly what sticks. And that's not to say that necessarily we're still not in some point in our lives continuously doing that in some way or another. I feel like there's things that I look at now that I'm just like, I should know better than this, but I'm still like throwing spaghetti all over the place, trying to figure it out. But that's the point. It's like what works for you isn't going to work for me, and what works for another person isn't going to work for another person. However, there are lessons along the way to help you on your path and be able to make things just a little bit easier. And so, I hope you're now at a place where you're not having to throw so much spaghetti on the wall, but I'm sure that there's still some aspects of throwing some spaghetti as you try to figure out this new path that you're on. So I've got to be honest, I feel like I would be doing the world a massive disservice if we didn't bring up your amazing support system, which, let's be real, we already kind of talked about her earlier, starts with the lovely Miss Snoring Winnie over here, the princess that she is. Yep, here we go.
Let me see. Her face is like, it's like buried in, can you see right there? She's buried.
Yes. She's like, I know what I'm
mess.
doing. Well, if you are not following Cheval's Pep Winnie on Instagram, I'm going to go ahead and give you a moment to make that dream a reality. Stop what you're doing right now and follow her. Sari will make sure to pop up her Instagram handle in the chat so that she can get all the fans that she deserves. But in all seriousness, there is no question whatsoever that you have an incredible support system in your life, which is so clear, from your family to your encouraging fiance to your friends in all different kinds of industries, and especially your fans from literally all over the world who grew their businesses right alongside you. I have no doubt that your support system has moved mountains in giving you the strength to stand up for what you believe in. Can you dive into what that actually means and why it's so important to have as a business owner, and even a little bit into what you were starting to talk about when we started this?
Oh, for sure. I don't even know where to begin, actually, because when I think about the community first, more than anything, I definitely get emotional, just because when you go through something where it feels like you're disappointing a lot of people, it's really heart-wrenching. And I definitely went through that period. And I feel like the people that were actually impacted most by what had gone on between an individual, and a company, it was the inner people. It was the people that deserve to have an authentic dress, and the people that have been there and supported the stores, the brides, and I feel like they were the casualties, yet these were the very people showing up and holding me accountable in such a beautiful way. And so that has never been lost on me. And I think that's actually sometimes where my imposter syndrome comes in. And I feel like so grateful to have had this community and also to be so receptive of me trying something new, especially in designing shoes. I'd never put my effort into shoemaking prior to 2022. And so, it was really wonderful synergy. And then, because of social media, you get the opportunity to narrate your own story and you get to decide how you show up. And I wanted to be really cognizant of the fact that I actually do not feel like a victim. I don't. I really do feel like I have a strong responsibility to continue moving forward and to show up the best I still can. Behind the scenes, I feel like I had a moment to really actually break and to be in a fetal position on the floor and have my family and the people around me really be present and a resource for me. And so between my family and my fiance, my dog, you look at her face and just everything seems right with the world every single time for me. Um, has been an enormous blessing that I'll never be able to really put into words. I wish I had the perfect way to say it. And I've also really invested in a mentor who has kind of taught me that, you get dealt a hand, and you can't exchange your cards, but you can certainly learn how to play the game better. And I don't feel like I had much of a business sense until he came into the picture. And so I do say for that as a takeaway is to, of course, never take for granted the community support you have and the people that are showing up for you. And it's okay to feel like you owe it to people. I think that's for me something that has made me want to get up and do the best I possibly can and not feel, victimized by the circumstances. So I think there's a bigger message there, of course, and everybody's, scenario and situation is very different. But I think there's something wonderful to knowing you're not alone and that there are genuine people out there that do want to see you succeed. So you should invest time in finding those people and hold very tight to them when they're there. My co-founder, Elise, is one of those for me as well. She's like my ride or die. And, I thank my lucky stars for that.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the hardest things about being a business owner that people won't know until they're in it is that it can feel like such a lonely journey when you don't feel like people around you know what you're doing or why it takes up so much of your time, right? Which is why it's so vital to have that inner circle of people that do, because there's a whole outer circle of people that are just not knowing what's going on in the ins and the outs. And plus, you've got that comparison and that imposter syndrome we mentioned earlier, and it all just can make creating a non-competitive and authentic community even a little more difficult. That whole statement was just beautiful, and I could feel how emotional you still get while talking about it. Do you have any tips on how to make and find a genuine community? I think that's like the biggest piece of it.
I think being guided by your intuition, anyone can actually listen to their intuition is a superpower. I don't know why, but I just feel like there is that sixth or seventh sense or whatever you want to call it. And it's really important to pay attention to that, especially in meeting new people. And I am somebody that really wants to trust everybody. I do. And I want to trust them until they prove me otherwise. And I've kind of learned I need to flip the script on that a bit and slow my roll. And have those harder conversations up front. And the big lesson there is trust what people do, not what they say. And that's kind of the big takeaway right there for me. But in cultivating those relationships, it's important to pay attention, of course, to the kindness and loyalty and the respect that people exude. But I think also paying attention to how they handle conflict, how quickly they can move on, how quickly they can apologize or admit to when they've potentially made a mistake that they didn't intend to. I mean, those qualities are so important, and it's kind of a two-sided coin there, that the respect and the kindness. But then on the other side, it's like, oh, they're actually really good at dealing with conflict and these really awkward conversations as well. They're willing to have them. And I think that's something to look at with people as well.
Oh, I love that so much. And as a huge advocate of community, I can attest to the strength of finding the right ones and the power that it brings to your business, to you, and even to your future, right? It's like you just think that it's a friend that you're making. No, it goes so much farther than that. And as you said, your co-founder, Elise, she didn't just like show up on the door one day and all of a sudden become a great co-founder. Like you've had a relationship with her, which led you to trust and respect. And now you're on this brand new journey together. So it's incredibly, incredibly powerful. And speaking of support and community, I know one of your favorite things right now is a passion for helping other creatives and business owners find a safe space to learn how to stay protected on their creative journey. You started an amazing foundation because of this. And to do it justice, I want you to explain every detail of what it is, why you started it, and more importantly, what your dreams are for it in the future.
Really, all of this comes down to doing whatever I can to make sure what I endured, no one else has to endure. And that's kind of where it all whittles down, right? That was my main goal in going transparent with my story. That's been my main goal in starting this foundation. And it's a little ambitious to have a small business and also a foundation to run. I feel a little in over my head at times, but we're kind of growing together. And nowadays it does seem like everyone's an authority, and it can be a beautiful thing, especially when people hone into what they're actually very good at and they're specialized in. And a part of me, again, felt this imposter syndrome of like, well, who am I to be the authority on something like this when this happened to me? And I learned to kind of appreciate the fact that the experience-based lessons I've learned and just being very forthright about those mistakes can be very helpful and educational in itself. So that is one of the pillars of the foundation. A second part is just providing connectivity to real specialized, attorneys, because whatever business you're in, it's nuanced, whether you're dealing with AI or you're dealing with real, creative, tangible things. If you're in a service-based industry, you need contracts. You need to have an understanding and expectations. And that's really important to get ahead of and to put specialty people in place early on. And then the third part is to provide a financial resource of some sort. So that is our grant, which we'll be awarding our first recipient on January 31st of this month. So that's exciting. And yeah, that's really what the foundation is meant to be. And I think over time she will evolve, especially as I'm learning these lessons as I go and I'm still in litigation. And I've just kind of tried to tell myself to take your time and not rush, especially with the pressures around us. And that can be, again, like a little bit of a lesson in itself, is to take a breather and take your time and give yourself a moment to really respond as opposed to reacting to things.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that you have led such a testament to patience. This has not been a fast journey on your behalf whatsoever.
I feel like the most impatient person, so I appreciate you saying that.
I mean, for also something that's like so personal, you're like, let's just move, like, let's just go. Like, come on, enough already. So like, I get that. And, for me, when I see this foundation is so important, but on so many different levels. Okay. So there's a dire need for it, clearly. Right. And that's just at the end of the day, that's what it is. Second, business owners today are standing up for what they believe in and need. But even cooler, they're publicly showing it now. They're publicly showing what they believe in and what they need on their socials and their websites, which is evident by the number of people who have publicly supported and shared your foundation, even within their own businesses, right? But third, and most important for everyone to remember, is that future generation customers, particularly Gen Z, and even they're young, but even a little bit of Gen A now, they're already demanding this from brands and companies that they do business with. I tell business, owners all the time, if you aren't setting your business up for the needs and wants of future generations, they will find a brand that is. And that includes showcasing authentic support for foundations and organizations and sharing what's important to you, whether that's supporting sustainability, being eco-friendly, LGBTQ, etc. But it also goes another step forward in just being responsible, right? Being a responsible business owner and educating yourself on the proper way to get set up in the first place, or what to avoid, in order to not fall down the many, many holes that are within any industry that's out there. So I think that that's all critical.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I was just going to say it's really wonderful to witness the shared responsibility there, and realize that two things can be true. You can be super enthusiastic and passionate about whatever it is you're building, but also learn to protect yourself so that it's both parties are winning. I definitely believe that is a recipe that's possible.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. Can we get that on a bumper sticker? Both parties are winning. Like, yes, like it's okay. Right. And man, that just goes right back to what we were talking about of just like the power of saying no and not having to say yes, because I think that's like how your head gets wrapped around it, is that both parties can't be winning. It's like you have to do something more for someone, or you have to say yes or they won't sign this, or whatever it is. And that's just, we now know that that's not true. Like, it's okay. There's power in both parties winning. So I love that. That's beautiful. Okay, so I actually want to give you the floor and allow you to open up directly with everyone here. And I want you to share your heart out, which is not so hard. That's just who you are when it comes to lessons learned and what you really just want everyone here to take away learning and knowing. I want you to pop us into a time machine and take us back to what you would tell your younger self, like just an unfiltered, raw conversation. And everyone, I want you to get ready and to take some notes here, because she's already been dealing us out some incredible wisdom, but I can tell that it's about to get real. So the floor is yours, younger self. Let us know.
Super hard to answer this question, and it's pretty much the number one thing I get, like, what's the big takeaway? What's the biggest lesson that you learn? And going back and talking to that girl, who's 24 years old, anxious for her opportunity, naive in a lot of ways, and stubborn, because stubbornly, recklessly optimistic, I think it would be a tough sell. It would. And I think I would have to approach it from a mindset of abundance, in that I'd have to really reach into the mindset where I felt like this is my only opportunity, to understanding that there is a plethora of companies and businesses to work with.
Yeah.
And it has to be that synergy. It has to be a two-way street. You kind of have to recognize that certain things there needs to be a no there in order to be a better yes.
Yes.
But I think right now, my big mantra and my big takeaway is go with grace. Like, that's been kind of my motto in all of this, because business is not business. Business is emotional. It is always going to be. And whether you're in a lawsuit, or you're going to a contract, or you're trying to say what's on paper, business is going to be emotional. And if you can learn an emotional capacity and a spiritual intelligence almost to really show up so that it is going to be productive and it's going to be in your best interest, as opposed to feeling like what you deserve and what happened, and I'm coming at this from a sense of revenge, and really getting caught up in those emotions, I think are what is going to make you kind of feel beholden or tethered to your past. It's going to be really hard to move forward. And so that, I don't know how I would package that to my younger self and learn what I have and go back and tell her that, because I think she'd be like, don't worry, I'll figure it out. I'll do something different this time. And so I think having that honest conversation would be tough. So I just say that to kind of tell that younger girl out there now, whoever she may be, to really take a beat and give yourself some grace, so that you can set yourself up for a precedent that makes sense for you. And there isn't going to be that falsetto started that will eventually potentially hurt you or take away some of your rights later on.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. Um, Random little question here. If an 18-year-old walked right up to you on the street today, would you say all those things and more? Or would you say something even like more candidly? Is there like something else that you can think of almost that you would go back and tell your younger self that's even just more along the lines of just personal, right? Instead of business?
Yeah. I feel if I had to condense it, maybe I would say you need challenges to find your limits, but then you need limits to find yourself.
Yeah.
And in that, I think there's kind of a balance in saying you're going to have to learn things on your own a little bit. You're going to need those experiences, but you don't necessarily need to really pull yourself through the ringer, and really get those deep scars to like learn lessons. You can actually learn from other people, going back to that, like a wise person learns from other people. I think there's like an alchemy of the two. And that's kind of where you establish yourself and establishing your own limits, going through those challenges, and then
Yeah.
learning from other people.
Yeah, I love that you added that second part. I really, really do, because I feel like, for anyone who's even just like newly starting a new business, it's like you go through the training or you go through the courses and you go through all this. And it's just, there's so much like business fluff on top of just like, yeah, I get that these are all the things that I'm supposed to know. Like these are all the things you're telling me that I'm supposed to get it. But then there's like those candid conversations off the cuff, which is just like, hey, like, people write blogs with like personal information in it too, of just like lessons learned that you don't have to, go through. There's like a whole other side to it too, right? There's school and there's life. And so I love that you added that second element, because I think that while it's important to have all the business tips, like having the just like street smart part of the conversation is hugely beneficial as well. So well, past lessons learned to walking right into the future, into a new pair of fabulous shoes. I am such a fan of all your amazing designs, and I have no doubt your gorgeous rhinestone boots graced many dancing feet at the Taylor Swift concerts last year, because that's the first thing that I thought of when I first saw those. And if you have not seen her designs yet, check out the link in the chat and send your favorite pairs to your clients to wear to all of their events and things going on this year. But no pun intended, please, Cheval, walk us through your new journey of being a shoe designer, from how you got the idea, where you're pulling your inspiration from, and what your dreams are for the future of She is Cheval.
Oh my goodness. Well, shoes felt sentimental to me. And I think that is something I love having in a creative sense, is just that deeper meaning behind it. And shoes are a product that actually carry you places. And I love how inclusive it is, because before working in bridal, you are a bit limited. It's the girl that's engaged, it's the girl that's going to the wedding. And now we can really reach as many people as we want, because everybody needs shoes. So that's kind of been a nice segue into a much bigger pond. I think what was the bigger challenge is actually learning something new and convincing myself I could be good at it, because with artistry and creators, there's a lot of convincing that's needed, that like you have something to say in this space. And so I actually really did think of other categories to go into. And I think shoes is just where I felt like I had something to say and some bit of my skill was transferable. And that was great. But I think in actually building a business, it fast tracked me into seeing a lot of my own weaknesses when it comes to learning a P&L statement, balancing your expense reports, or your expense sheets, learning inventory management. And I, again, am just lucky to have the partner that I do have, because there is very much a go-getter mentality. But I also think that there is a strong awareness of where our specialties are. And I always say this, but when you are starting a business, you have to wear a lot of hats. As an entrepreneur, it's inevitable. But I do feel it's important to not lose sight of where your resources are best spent.
Yes.
And that can be really tough to delegate, because I kind of think, well, you should just learn everything, right? Because once you learn it, then when you delegate, you kind of know what where they could be BSing you and where they probably know their stuff. So I think there is some value there, but you do have to pay attention to time. That is your finite resource and your energy. You don't want to be burning energy on things that can be better spent elsewhere. So that's been a big challenge in starting a new business and kind of having to put on a business cap that I never really exercised in a real way before.
Yeah. Well, also, I just think like shoes are fun, right? Like
So fun.
part of this too, where they're just so fun. And I mean, you look behind you, there's so many shoes. Like it's clearly your happy spot. And I think that that's really a powerful statement to the true journey of reinventing yourself. Is you're right. There's probably many other categories that you could have fallen into that you would have done just fine. But going to a place of something that you truly enjoy and makes you happy personally will only shine through in whatever you do on a professional level. And that's evident. You love shoes and you're bringing so much joy to everyone else through shoes. And so that's been an amazing thing to watch unfold, is the authenticity that you're bringing to this new chapter in your life.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Say.
So this has all been amazing. I can't believe our time is almost up. I'm really sad about it, actually, because there's a million other things I feel like you and I could talk about. And I love this time we've had together. But we do have a few moments and we have some questions. Are you open to that?
Of course.
Perfect.
Winnie is too. She's snoring, but she's into it.
Here, I hear her just little like snoring sounds and they're just soothing. They're so great. Okay, so here is number one. What was an inspirational quote, either your own or someone else's, that motivated you to keep moving forward? I loved this one.
It's probably throw shine, not shade. In the
Great
sense of, you can put your energy, you get to decide where you put your energy. And I always say, like, if you feel like making a negative comment on a business page, I say do the opposite. Go make a positive comment on, a business page that you're really proud of. Like flip it so that it's constantly reinforcing a more positive message and it's actually providing, some value. So I like that mentality in business.
Yeah.
It's a refocus of your attention, and that's what business is. It's all managing attention. So
I love it. That's brilliant. I love it. Another bumper sticker, please. Thank you. Add it
Yeah.
to the task list.
With sparkle on it, of course.
Tons of sparkle. In fact, if you don't drive and sparkle comes off as you're driving, I don't want it. Like, I just don't want it. Oh my gosh. Okay. What 3 things have helped you overcome during this challenging season? Netflix, obviously, Winnie, ice cream. I mean, all the things, clearly.
Let's assume Winnie is one giant category. Yeah, I would say working out, like, moving your body. It's good for your brain. I definitely see it as something physical that's very good for you, but it puts my brain in a better space typically. So working out, the support system.
Pilates, are you Peloton? What are you doing? Oh my gosh.
I actually, I was really into like those hot girl walks, as they call it, just going on a really long walk and kind of getting some work done while you're walking. But now I'm kind of back at the gym again, like doing weights and stuff. I go through ebbs and flows. So I think as long as I'm moving my body, and I listen to like self-help podcasts, and like good music, but I'm just constantly like reinforcing positive thoughts. So that's what I do. Yeah, that's the second thing. It's the support system, like really having people that trust you and going back to that, learning to say no. You definitely want people around you that can tell you no as well. You don't want yes people around you. You want people that can be aware of your blind spots and remind you of patterns that you might have not broken yet. So I would say that, and then probably just continuing to create. And, when you find yourself bored, like, I'm impossibly bored today, I feel unmotivated, I always just hop on Pinterest and just look at visuals. I don't go to Instagram. I don't go to TikTok because I feel like those two things can sometimes eke away, like the comparison theory of seeing what other people are doing. Whereas Pinterest is a lot more aesthetically pleasing. It's more visual and you can find inspiration rabbit holes there. So I actually genuinely do that a lot. So I'd say those three things.
I love that. That's awesome. Okay, this one's kind of fun. I don't know if they meant like, they did say business owner. Okay. If we met randomly on the street and you could give a small business owner just one piece of advice, what would it be? I feel like we've almost like tackled this one to death today, but maybe if you were walking down the street and you saw a small business owner, like what's something that you would say to someone just like as you? Obviously you would say hi, you'd probably say nice shoes. Like how would someone treat you as you were walking down the street?
Oh gosh, there's so many things I would say. Like, there's so many sound bites in my brain that I'm like, this and that. This is going to be so unromantic and unsexy, but I would say cardinal rule of business is not to spend more money than you make, which I'm sorry, but like, I would love to say, keep calm, sparkle on, but like that literally is the number one cardinal rule of business. You cannot spend more money than you make. That's probably the big ticket.
And also not everything is tax deductible. So sorry, like turns out your shopping sprees and all of your other things are not tax deductible. That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Okay. So what do you miss most about designing dresses and what's your favorite part about designing shoes?
I miss brides. I miss dealing with brides every single day. And the stores too, because I think store owners really get it as well, like on the same level as when you're designing a dress. And I miss that, that real acknowledgement that this is a big deal for somebody. And I think when you really remind yourself of that every day, because this industry, why I love it so much is it requires so much energy from you. And I feel like most people that are in the wedding industry are batteries. There's somebody came up with this quote a long time ago. It's stuck in my brain, but it's like, there are people that are batteries and there are people that are vacuums. And the batteries are the ones that energize and recharge. And yeah, they need a moment of rest, but they're constantly infusing charge into something and emotion and respecting all of that. And then there are vacuums where it's just constantly draining. It's distracting. It's loud. It's noisy. It's, it cleans up messes, but not always, so I think it's important to find those batteries. And
That's
I
great.
miss that energy about the bridal industry and designing dresses that's required. What I love most about shoes is that there's a different energy about shoes that I really respect. It does feel a little bit more levity and joyful. And like there is a little less writing on it because obviously, it's not this one dress that the girl wears,
And people normally have spares, right? Like it's totally normal. I mean, not that people don't have multiple dresses they wear that day too, but like there's also an element of like multiple shoes is absolutely okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And the commonality, you didn't ask this question, but I'll answer it anyway. I think the commonality between the two is that I love that feeling that you get when you step into a dress or a pair of shoes that it makes you feel good and it makes you feel empowered. And not to say that this one product is just like carrying the team, but it facilitates it in a way that like you just feel good about yourself, you feel confident, and you exude that and you see it when a girl walks into a room and she just feels good about herself. And a lot of times it has to do with how she's carrying herself and what she's wearing and how she's presenting.
Really?
And so I love that you have that in both dresses and shoes.
Oh, I love that. That's so great. I love this. Okay, here's another one. What books or podcasts do you listen to, and what voice was most impactful during the transition in your career, personal life?
I'm not a huge book reader. I definitely do a lot of podcasts and audibles. I like Robert Greene and I like Malcolm Gladwell. I think both of them have a way of looking at life from like a Stoics mindset, and like thinking of like Ryan Holiday and Viktor Frankl and all these people that really remind you about this kind of spiritual energy that you can tap into, especially when life gets really emotional and you feel like you've been wronged in a way, or that there is something that needs to be repaid or something like that. And the past is a reference. It's not a place of residency. And so I try to look for these leaders and influencers, especially in the podcast world and in the book writing world, that are really forward thinking and come at it from a level that makes you feel like you still have the control, even when everything is spiraling out of control and circumstances are not in your favor and all that stuff. It kind of brings you back to a place that will make it make sense. So
Yeah.
I like those people.
I love that. That's really great. And yet another bumper sticker. I hope everyone is writing down these gems that you keep throwing out. They're so good. I'm going to go back. I'm going to listen to the whole thing and just like have Post-its all over my office that are literally just quotes from you. And I'm just going to be like, wait, I need to just have a moment.
I don't even know if I can take credit for a lot of them, because like the memory I have it's selective, and sometimes it's derivatives from things I've heard, so or believe.
It's great. It's so great. It's all awesome. Okay, here's another one. Oh, this is a good one. How do you narrow down your inspiration, not choosing too many details or elements into one design?
That's such a good question.
Wow.
I don't know how to really answer this question in one way, but I will say in designing shoes, what I kind of relied on was nostalgia. And when in going through what I did, or enduring what I have endured, I feel like a lot of my life was getting pulled into this one chapter. Like, you are defined in this chapter, you signed this contract, and everything was kind of trying to bring me back to this space. So what I did was I just like hopped on over that and went back to like my studies as a designer and as a child growing up, some of these things that really helped form my aesthetic identity and that voice for me, like illustrating. My dad taught me to draw, going way back and pulling some of those nuances forward so that I could remind myself of these like places where I developed a lot of my identity. And that made me feel like I could kind of pick and choose, again, parts to reinvent. And I didn't feel so beholden to my whole life I've wanted to be a wedding dress designer, and now I can't do that publicly, so like I tried to kind of put that in a box and say, let's hop over that for a minute. And then let's use some of these influences to kind of start fresh. And I think that's also a way to connect with people, because especially like a millennial, like I'm a millennial, I use a lot of emojis, and I love going back to the 80s. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a real fun way to connect to people. Like, oh my gosh, do you remember Pogs? Like, oh my gosh, do you remember Skip Its? And like, I like connecting on those lighthearted things. Especially when a big part of the last 3 years has been connecting to people through trauma, which is also a beautiful thing too. But it was nice to kind of focus on more of the levity things for design. And so, yeah, I think that answers the question.
No, that's great.
Kind of.
Keep your mindset in that similar space for this question. How do you think about branding in terms of consistently adding something fun and refreshing? These are great questions.
Really good. I feel like a lot of branding is managing your own attention, because with the way everything is presented now, especially on social media, it can feel like, oh, the algorithm this, the algorithm that, go pump out content. And you can waste so much of your time and energy trying to fulfill some made up content quota, that simplifying and clarifying your business at the end of the day is really important. It's a good exercise to go through, is like, what is it that I'm here to say? And what am I going to be really good at? what is the low-hanging fruit, especially on social media, that I know I can do and I won't feel super awkward doing every day. And I actually kind of went through that period myself, because with my old, you know, account, which I always consider to be my personal account, there was a big evolution happening in social media. And I was kind of feeling naturally guided toward more of the influence world because people were interested, and that was helpful. But there was also part of me that just felt really awkward.
Yeah.
And then, you know, when you look at social media, so much of it is just regurgitated. It is literally people copying each other. And what I think is going to happen is there's going to be a pendulum swinging back to really specialized, really high quality, really thoughtful, nuanced content. I think people are going to hone into their niches more and feel less obligated to go over there and do that TikTok dance that everyone is doing and it takes 6 hours to nail, you know, and like I think that's what's going to happen, which is great, because then there's going to be these little pockets and rabbit holes to really explore on social media. And so I'm here for that. I like that idea. And going back to your original question about branding, I think it's going to be more specialized and clarified.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I am crossing my fingers that you just manifested this into the world and that I'm not going to have to actually start dancing on TikTok, because I've avoided it for a couple of years, even though, you know, Elizabeth and Nora, who are founders of RPC, are really into trying to like get us into the TikTok scene. And I'm like, guys, it's not going to be me. Like, it's not going to be
Happening.
me.
It's not happening for me either. Like I really try with TikTok and there's something off for me. So I've kind of, it's not that I've relinquished it, but I do feel like I'm more myself on Instagram. And so I try to pay attention to that when I'm feeling really distracted over there.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, you have to do what feels right for you, right? You have to do what feels real. So we can stay off TikTok. We'll let the others take over TikTok.
Take it away.
All right, we've got a last question here, and then we'll do some closing. What can we look forward to going into this year's collection? Do you have any plans for another pop-up?
Yes, of course. We actually just closed up our New York City pop-up, and it was an amazing run because we were supposed to be there for a couple months and it ended up being a year and change. So we are so grateful. But going through, you know, our pop-up, we've realized we're going to be doing more satellite pop-ups, you know, and hopefully a state near you, but we've got Tampa coming up. We have Nashville. We also have Kentucky again. So we'll be doing kind of these satellite pop-ups. And then of course, we're going to be coming out with new biscuits, like I like to say, lots of new shoes, but we're also experimenting in different product categories. So hopefully, you know, more accessories and things to jazz up your look. But yeah, lots to come,
Girl,
hopefully.
if anyone can bring Pogs back, it's you, and all millennials will cheer and shout and all the things. I feel like we just need like a millennial capsule. And I feel like you're the leader that we've been waiting for. So I think that should definitely be on your agenda.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
My friend, thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with me today. This has been such an honor. And don't you have a gift for everyone today?
I do. Oh, I'm so glad. You're so good. I always forget, you know, we are offering everybody on the call and your community 15% off to shop Cheval.com. And the promo code is rock, paper, coin, all one word, all caps. And yeah, so a little gift from us to you just for joining and participating. And I hope you find some fresh sparkle steps for your closet.
I love it. I know I'm for sure using that code. I may or may not already have a few pairs that are in my cart ready to go. So thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us on RPC Unfiltered. As a reminder, this is a monthly webinar hosted by Rock, Paper, Coin. Last year, we brought you a year of RPC Money Talks, but 2024 brings you a brand new series where you will learn from pros you love and value as they bring you real, raw, and totally unfiltered conversations about the good, bad, and the ugly of running a business. Don't miss out on this refreshingly honest new season, and be on the lookout for next month's guest and topic in just a bit. And with that, thank you everyone for joining us. And thank you, Cheval.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.